everybody! Welcome back to Let's Play Great Ace Attorney 2, Ryunosuke's Resolve. This is V-Diffuser. In our last episode, we found out that Clint Van Zeek's autopsy report is missing, and we got attacked by a small terrier. So, let's see what we can do next, eh? Is this German? It's an old German folk song. Rather a fine rendition, I think. Okay. That's the least of my concerns. Iris? What's the matter? Who is that sprawling, that relaxed gentleman over there? Iris, she even listening? Excuse me, sir. I do apologize for troubling you whilst you're singing so merrily, but would you be kind enough to explain the situation? Well, that worked. A crooning gentleman and a mute young girl. A rather tantalizing juxtaposition. Oh, shut up, folks. And one that appears to have incited the gods of deduction within me to find their voices too. The strains of reasoning within me. Oh boy. She knocked him unconscious. It's very clear what she did. To Music Land, where all is sweetness and delicacy and harmony, unless your name happens to be Herlock Sholmes. The game is afoot! Hip hip! Firstly, we consider the gentleman's nationality. Clearly, he's a German with no grasp of the English language. No. As evidenced by the Germanic... Oh, God. Oh, God. In such apparently high spirits. He's out cold, man. The answer, of course, Iris, is clearly known to you. Indeed, we need only follow the gaze of those bright young eyes to unravel that particular part of this mystery. The reason for the man's mildly irritating warbling is revealed by him. Holmes, you're about to end up the same way. You're obviously offered our German guests to cup up your latest herbal blend. The tea's delectable flavor has made the man's spirits so... What even, Sholmes? Oh, God. I can't. I just can't. Who exactly is this gentleman availing himself so thoroughly of the SETI? Well, that's freaking obvious. As it happened a number of years ago, a certain gentleman of German origin, he's not German. The gentleman's name was Wilhelm Gottfried Sigismund von Ormstein, except the one we actually met was a kid. As King of Germany. No, no, no. No, it doesn't. I'm with Iris at that point. What even? No, he's not the King of Germany. Which leaves us with one remaining imponderable... Yes, you, young Iris. But your apparently inexplicable silence is unable to hide the truth. The reason for your muteness is concealed inside the knapsack. A 5-pound note, I believe. I must say, as a compatriot, I'm deeply saddened. It would appear that you've allowed yourself to be bribed into silence by His Royal Highness. Oh, God, no. No. The handle of my favorite coffee cup. My favorite coffee cup has been broken by the King of Germany, and Iris, you tried to conceal it from me. No. I shall have a bill sent via government channels to the German royal family for its replacement. Oh, for love of... Thus concludes Herlock Sholmes' great deduction of this painful puzzle. And of course, as always, you're freaking wrong. I'm sorry, this is too funny for words. I should not be laughing this hard. With your silence as well, the fellow's jovial warbling rather rings in the ears, does it not? Mr. Sholmes, I must say something does rather trouble me. Pray, Miss Susato, do tell. The fact that you're wrong on many occasions doesn't appear to have moved a muscle since we arrived. Oh. And you haven't said a word either, Iris. Mr. Sholmes has it all right. You might as well own up to it now. Your reasoning isn't entirely without substance, I must admit. And one other thing, Mr. Sholmes. Yet another grievance, Mr. Naruhodo? Surely not. Well, I actually read the story of that case recently, the one you're just describing. And according to that, at least, it wasn't the King of Germany. It was the King of Bohemia. Goodness, was it? Yeah. Yes, that's quite true. Master Gotz, the prince, testified to that in court. In his words, I have come to see the great exhibition all the way from my home in Bohemia. I would ask you to keep that minor error to yourselves. It could easily become quite a scandal. Ow. I believe, Mr. Naruhodo, it's time for course correction. Iris is hiding something. But one truth is incontrovertible. My favorite coffee cup is no more. So, shall we embark again? On a joint presentation of Sherlock Sholmes' Logic and Reasoning Spectacular! All day. It's because he's out cold. No, it's not the tea. So what, it's a mix of herbs that gives you the urge to sing? Goodness, I should like to try some. And I'd like to hear your singing. But this man, just how long does he intend to keep up with that tune, do you suppose? He's been stock still the entire time, and if you look closely, his lips aren't moving either. He's out cold. No, it's the gramophone. The real reason for the mild, irritating warbling is the gramophone. Indeed! But no well-bred gentleman would break into an obscure folk song when making a social call. In other words, the gentleman isn't singing at all. In fact, it would appear that the fellow is unconscious. Music seems to have stopped now. I ask you, Mr. Naruhodo. Yes? Why would I have purchased a recording of that gibberish? How should I know? Well, never mind. On with the deduction. Who exactly is this gentleman availing himself so thoroughly of the say? No, the mask isn't that. No. No, no, no. Yeah, the boy whom you had in tears. Don't remind me. Or anyone else. Alright, that mask doesn't belong to any king. We know that. Because we can identify the true owner of this mask. Actually, that mask belongs to Kazuma Asoki. In other words, my memory is sublimely unreliable. Yes, you finally you finally come to the truth. Only you could try to make that sound positive. Kazuma's mask has been languishing on this metal chest for several days, though that doesn't explain why the gentleman is wearing it now. But it is now a simple matter to determine our guest's true identity. After all, the gentleman is unconscious. We need only excuse ourselves in advance, gently lift the mask and peer beneath it, to show it is fricking Susato's dad. I don't believe it. Father? Father! I'm afraid, Miss Susato, you must be mistaken. No, I think not, Mr. Sholmes. Good. The foot comes down. Then it would appear that our logic and reasoning has once again revealed the truth. This mysterious visitor is my unconscious father, Yujin Mikotoba. Logic and reasoning are just looking and saying. Stop going down. Jeez. Alright, it's nothing to do with her freaking, knapsack. So that's a £5 note poking out from Iris's knapsack, is it? Oh dear, I can't be sure. Most money we encounter is in coin form. Hey, I haven't seen any paper money anyway. The silent type himself, though, judging by his present state. There must be some other reason for Iris's silence, I suppose. It's the metal, it's the chest, that's what it is. Yes, the reason for your muteness is concealed inside the metal chest. An excellent observation, for upon close inspection, there's something different about this chest's appearance. It's kept locked at all times, yet now, the catch is open. Evidently, this has something to do with your refusal to speak, Iris. She knows she's in trouble. I merely need to open this chest. Here we go. No! Hurley, don't! Mr. Sholmes! Okay, that was good. That was good. No, he's not. No, he didn't. Oh, Hurley, I told you not to open it. Ah, so you found your voice now, Iris. In other words, what just happened clearly reveals the truth here. Yes, the real reason for your silence until now is something different to the usual. Well, he's left me alone on a ballroom floor, so I'm gonna have to dance this next part solo. And anyway, I need to get to the bottom of this, for my own peace of mind. Now then, Iris isn't usually the silent type, so... You mean you don't actually know the answer yet, despite knowing the point of the finger before? Miss Susato, sometimes a man needs to point his finger first and think later. He's definitely the ancestor of Phoenix Wright. It's the key. Yes, the real reason for your silence is the key behind your back. When Mr. Sholmes was thrown into the air before, just before you called out to try to stop him, you slipped something out of your mouth. That something is the key now in your hands. No doubt, the key to the chest. You're so clever, Runo. So now it becomes clear, thanks to Mr. Sholmes' graphic demonstration, we can well imagine what happened here. But the Professor Mikitoba also opened that metal chest only to be punched into the air and land sprawled on the city. Oh god. Oh god. That's funny. That is funny. What about the stylish scarf and the cup of tea? And above all, why would he be wearing Kazuma-sama's mask? Because they were all on top of it. Well, for those curious details, I can think of only one explanation. Clearly an unbelievable miracle took place in this room. Isn't that right, Iris? Consider how the room was arranged before this whole painful experience took place. Professor Mikitoba opened the chest completely unaware of what awaited him inside. The mask was flung into the air just as he was, only to land neatly on his face when it fell back down. The teacup's journey through the air ended when it caught on the unconscious professor's finger. You mean to say that the stylish scarf is actually just a tablecloth? That the great detective's office, after all, a place of miraculous deductions. Would you expect anything less? Yes, you're right. It happened exactly as you said. The truth is far funnier than what I thought. Brilliant, Runo. Thus concludes Ryunosuke Naruhodo's great deduction of this punchy puzzle. That's awful. So then why don't I make a fresh pot of tea for us all?
Objection!
Oh, you've got one. An admirable performance, Mr. Naruhodo. But in the final act of the show there, you rather missed everything of importance. Mr. Sholmes, you would cast your mind back to my earlier deduction. Iris, clearly you're hiding a great secret. She is, from the look on her face. Mr. Sholmes must be right. Whatever had a great secret was, the cat isn't out of the bag yet. It's the autopsy report, isn't it? You were attempting to abscond with that coffee cup. No, you weren't. Her great secret is something else. It's the autopsy report. Oh?
Take that!
You are attempting to abscond with that case file. Iris, as you know very well, nothing escapes the attention of a great detective. Oh no. We visited Scotland Yard Autopsy Laboratory earlier today. And Dr. Gorey informed us that the autopsy report of Clint Van Zeeks had gone missing. Clint Van Zeeks. Yes, I do seem to recall that some years ago I asked to see the report in question. You were with me, weren't you, Iris? You mean it was you, Iris. So those papers you have there are... I'm sorry. Forgive me. Oh, Iris. elementary. On more than a few levels. In truth, I would like to have thought that I could have predicted the booby trap chest. But it caught me completely off guard. I was very nearly the late consulting detective Herlock Sholmes. I'm sorry, Hurley. So you mean this autopsy report really is... Yes, I took it from the lab, even though I knew it was very important. Was there something in it that troubled you, Iris? Not exactly something that troubled me. Something I'd been looking for. When I saw this report, when I saw the writing in it, I knew it was Daddy's. The writing? Your father's writing. What do you mean? Iris must be something that's hard for her to talk about. Forgive me for interrupting, my dear fellows. Mr. Sholmes, what is it? He's coming too, isn't it? I feel as though the poor unconscious gentleman, Massetti, has been somewhat forgotten. Father! Perhaps we should find our guest somewhere more peaceful to rest. Mr. Naruto! Yes? Would you be so kind as to lend him your bed? We must do our very best to make him comfortable, I feel. Of course. I'll help you carry him out. No, I can manage alone, thank you. You have tea to enjoy. We wouldn't want Iris's brew to stew. I will never forget that image for the rest of my life. Because there's no better way to make the professor comfortable than dragging him upstairs like a trunk. I wonder, perhaps that was deliberate. Maybe Mr. Sholmes is making himself scarce to give Iris a chance to talk more freely. We must use this opportunity to talk with Iris and find out what's going on. Would you like to tell us about it, Iris, about your father? I'm sure I told you before, didn't I? That Daddy used to be Hurley's partner. And that notes about all the cases they solved together are kept inside that metal chest. That's right, Hurley told me, you see. He said that Daddy's somewhere far away now, so we can't meet. That's one way of describing it. Then when I secretly unlocked the chest and read through the papers inside, I started to build up a picture inside of my head of what Daddy must be like. Well, that's only natural. You're just like any other girl of your age. Yeah, she sure is. He was a professor of medical science, so I studied and took my degree too. Well, that's only natural, I suppose. In that respect, you're not quite like any other girl of your age, though. But there was one thing that I could never find out. Daddy's name. His name wasn't anywhere on any of the notes that he'd made about his work with Hurley. But then one day, that's what happened, is it? When you saw this autopsy report, you finally managed to work it out. Is that right? Yes. So it was the handwriting of this report that caught her eye. When I saw the writing on that report, I could hardly believe it. I know that handwriting, I thought to myself, because it was the same as the writing you'd seen on your father's case notes. Exactly. I was desperate to compare the two properly. I needed to see them side by side. I asked the doctor in the laboratory, but I was told I couldn't take the report away. And even worse, I was told that was the first and last time we'd be allowed to even look at it here. So you decided to steal it. When I compared the autopsy report with the case notes I had here, there was no doubt the handwriting was exactly the same. It was Daddy's. a signature of the coroner at the bottom of the autopsy report read Dr. John H. Wilson. So that's how I finally found out. I learned Daddy's name at last. I see. Ever since then, I've called myself Iris Wilson, and that's also when I had the brilliant idea of writing stories all about Daddy's exciting times with Hurley. I decided here and then I'd write the adventures of Herlock Sholmes. Oh, Iris, I had no idea stories had quite a deep and personal significance for you. I can see why the autopsy report was so important to her now. And why she was prepared to break the law to get her hands on it. I must apologize, Iris. This is really all my fault. Hurley, I made a promise, you see, that until the time was right, I'd keep the details about your father a secret. I know. I've been very naughty. I'll take the autopsy report back to Dr. Gorey and apologize, I promise. Yes, we'll go together, I think. Then, let me look after it for you until we get there. I must go and water my herbs, I think. I'll see you all later. Oh, Iris. Ah! What? How? What's the meaning of this, Mr. Sholmes? Oh, dear me. So, you've noticed, I see. But that would mean... What on earth's the matter, Miss Susato? You've turned as white as a sheet. It's this autopsy report, Mr. Naruhodo. The one from 10 years ago. The writing isn't Dr. Wilson's at all. Oh, great. Because I know this writing very well. This writing is my father's. Oh. What? Professor Mikitoba's? Indeed. It's true. And now you know, my dear fellows. No! I don't know anything! What on earth does all this mean, Sheriff Mr. Sholmes? It means Dr. Wilson, who looked a lot like Watson, isn't Watson at all. All his adventures were with Susato's dad. There's the idea that's slowly forming in my mind. It's just too extraordinary to believe. Please, you have to explain. So, this autopsy report was actually penned by Professor Mikitoba then. But that makes no sense. It's not possible, surely. Not possible? My dear fellow, pray, take a deep breath and think again. Yes, you're right. In some ways, it actually makes a great deal of sense. 10 years ago is when Father returned to Japan after his extended study tour in Britain. And prior to his return, where was Dr. Mikitoba engaged? Of course, he was an assistant in Dr. Wilson's laboratory learning about forensic science. And as an assistant, he would have aided with the dissection work, making detailed notes, which would be assembled into the full autopsy report. Once the work was complete, the head coroner would check the contents and put his signature on the document. In other words, the only writing of Dr. Wilson's in the report would be his signature at the end. Iris got the wrong end of the stick, you mean? She saw that and assumed the whole report had been written by Dr. John H. Wilson. Which is very understandable, of course. What a complicated situation. thinking about it, most of what we know about you, Mr. Sholmes, comes from the published stories of your exploits. Yes, The Adventures of Herlock Sholmes, written by Iris. And we really have no way of knowing what's fact and what's fiction. Most troubling for you, my dear fellow, I'm sure. So what about this supposed partner of yours? Does he really exist or not? Ah, you've come straight to the point, I see. And please come straight to the answer. I believe Iris explained it in one of her installments. He was a trusted comrade, and the only person I could truly have called a friend. And did this partner of yours truly make a record of all your cases? Are his notes really stored inside that metal chest? Absolutely, my dear madam. Absolutely. So where's your partner now? We rarely meet. You see, he lives on the other side of the world. But if this autopsy report and the records of all your old cases were penned by the same hand, and if the autopsy report was written, though not signed by your famous partner, there would be only one logical conclusion. Pray, impress me. This entire series is about me and my descendants, not yours. That's impressive enough. Or rather, Naruhodo's. Your partner would have to be Yujin Mikotoba. In other words, Miss Susato's father. Upon my word, Mr. Naruhodo. Yes? You are coming along wonderfully. You've hit upon the method at last. You finally grasped the art of deduction. You mean to say... Allow me to introduce you to my great friend and partner, Mikotoba. Professor Mikotoba! Does this mean you're the real Dr. Wilson? No, my dear. I'm still my old self, Yujin Mikotoba, your father. Of course. This is obviously too much for Susato-san to take in. I must say, though, how my old friend has attained worldwide celebrity as a great mystery solver is the greatest mystery of all. I still remember the first time we met. Ah, pray remind me. When was it again, Mikotoba? 16 years ago, Sholmes. That's quite. 16 years ago. I just arrived from Japan with Seshiro and Genshin. I was in search of lodgings close to the hospital, some comfortable rooms at a reasonable price. The rents are devilishly high in that particular area. That's right, so I decided I need someone to share lodgings and the expense. I was fortunate enough to be introduced to Sholmes, who found himself in a similar situation. I was a callow fellow back then, a mere shadow of the great detective you see before you now. I was working at the hospital's chemical laboratory at the time, indulging my curiosities for a little game. And the situation of our cohabitation led to us pursuing cases together, you see. Hard to believe. It was mere 6 years. We had a great many adventures. But in the last year of Mikotoba's stay in Britain, that most infamous of cases presented itself. The case with which you've become rather familiar yourselves, the Professor killings. After the trial, Seshiro and I were summoned back home. Hardly surprising, given the circumstances. So there you have it. And as you know, all the details recorded by my trusty chronicler remain in that metal chest. That's just amazing. Professor Mikotoba really is Mr. Sholmes' famous partner. But this means... Father, goodness my dear, what a cutting look. As your daughter, I'm very proud to learn you are the great detective's partner. But nevertheless, Judo throw! There's another mystery I really must ask you to explain now. Who's Iris's real dad? And that is... You know very well what it is. The unresolved matter of Iris's father. Of course, I'd almost forgotten about that one. If Dr. John H. Wilson isn't... I should have seen this coming, I suppose. Iris told us that all the notes about the great detective's adventures are in that metal chest were written by her father. Isn't that correct, Mr. Sholmes? That is indeed what I told young Iris. But if you're Mr. Sholmes' partner, father, and you wrote all those case notes, then Iris's father must be you! Sholmes, did you lie to her? Upon my word, Miss Susato. You are coming along wonderfully as well. You too have hit upon the method at last. You finally grasped the art of deduction. What? What you've always told me, father, is that my mother died when I was born 16 years ago. And you left me in grandfather's care when you embarked on your study tour of Britain. And I've always accepted that. But all this about Iris. Oh, here it is. Susato-san's ice-cold stare. No, now hold on a moment. It was very complicated. I mean, it's really not what you think. You're digging yourself in deeper, you know? Perhaps you'd like to explain exactly what it is. There it is. Now the eyes go from ice-cold to red-hot just before she... No, really, you've got the wrong end of the stick. Sholmes, say something, man. That's quite enough, my fiery fellows. Mr. Sholmes, when did you get all dressed up? Whilst I don't like to interrupt this exciting exploration of the past, Mikotoba and I have an urgent matter that requires a short excursion. But it's very late, Mr. Sholmes. Where must you go? Why, my dear madam, is that not obvious? My partner and I must pursue our natural enemies. So get your coat, Mikotoba. The game is afoot. But Sholmes, I really must give Susato a full explanation, I think. Later, my dear fellow, later. Our carriage awaits downstairs already. Oh, you haven't changed one iota, have you? I mean, really, I visit our home after 10 long years. And when I open that chest in a fit of nostalgia, I quite inexplicably pass out. And as if it wasn't enough, when I eventually regain consciousness, I'm plunged straight into all this. Father, please, go with Mr. Sholmes now. What? I've no doubt that whatever happened, you were acting in everyone's best interests. I trust you completely. Susato. And sending the great detective and his great partner off on renewed adventures together is more than I could ever hope for in my wildest dreams. Very well then, we'll speak again later. So, I believe your own work is done for the day. I wish you the best of luck for tomorrow. Yes, Naruhodo, good luck in battle, and in reaching a decision. Yeah, about whether to go back to Japan.
So much happened that day that I barely knew what to do with myself. It would only be later that I'd come to realize how amidst the chaos I'd unleashed were all the clues I needed to finally unearth the truth, and that all the turmoil was necessary to give me the resolve to see everything through.
There we go. There's our title. And with that, it's the end of the episode. I will see you guys next time for our last episode, for our last chapter, Ryunosuke's Resolve. See you guys then.